Back tonight on In Focus, the recent spate of tavern killings and brutal mass shootings have left South Africans living in fear. In fact, citizens are beginning to question whether is it not time to deploy the army across the country. However, security experts say deploying the military will not do anything to prevent murders or bring the justice to those who are behind them. And for more on this, we are joined by John Stupart, a director at Africa Defence Review. John, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. We saw, John, during the time of the pandemic when the army was deployed, there was some degree of rule of law. Things were in order, people were keeping to the law. We are in a crisis at this particular point, it seems, and the police are not able to respond to all these events of killings and brutal mass shootings that are happening around the country. Why should we not make a call to the South African National Defence Force to assist?
Well, thank you. I think firstly the simple answer is that the South African National Defence Force simply doesn't have the ability to intervene in the kind of interventions that we're talking about here. We're talking about investigations, criminal sort of police work and things like that. And that is something that the military simply doesn't really do at all, to be honest. And I think in that case, it's just not really very well suited for this kind of work. Obviously, during the unrest in July, it was more a case of deploying soldiers en masse, literally emptying the barracks of every soldier, anyone in a uniform and who could carry the rifle more or less the right way. Would be sent out into the streets as almost as a force multiplier, simply to kind of be there and provide a presence. This is not that. I think the shootings and the murders we are now seeing nationwide require a far more nuanced and delicate approach that, like I said, the military simply don't have and should fall very firmly within the police's realm.
How different is this situation, for example, to the July unrest that we saw that needed help from all quarters, including the army to step in and bring order and stability?
So I think the misconception perhaps by South Africans is that the military is this vast force that would effectively be a South African police service times 2 sort of effect. But even during the unrest last year, the military was comparatively small in presence or in manpower compared to the South African police services. What we did see, unfortunately, during the unrest was a very, very delayed, or at least on the ground, a perceived delay by the South African police services, which only emphasized the deployment of the military later on and its impact. Like I said, it was more a case of putting boots on the ground and providing that reassuring presence. Also, in terms of there are some things the military can do. So not to completely say the military is irrelevant in this modern scenario now, or this 2022 scenario now. The manning of roadblocks, the provision of nighttime surveillance. These are things that the military can very much do and free up that space for the police to then go on and do actual police work. So I think that's the fundamental difference there, is that the military last year were effectively just putting boots on the ground as much as possible, whereas here we need to, rather than a sledgehammer, be going at it with something like a scalpel, really.
So it's alleged that the firearms, for example, the ammunition that is being used, the type of force that we are seeing conducting these mass shootings is something that our police can actually not be able to withstand. There are others who are even suggesting that it could be something that is coming, operations that are coming from outside of the country.
So I think the sad reality is South Africa's never really been hard up for assault rifles and high caliber and high velocity ammunition. That's nothing new to this country, unfortunately, and it's nothing new even before the looting and the riots last year. So I don't think it's necessarily legitimate to argue that all of a sudden we're now seeing a far higher volume of firepower being seen on the streets to the extent it's something that the police cannot handle. The police are fairly well equipped, I dare say, in this kind of violent countermeasures. The police are better equipped than the military in many respects, in terms of tactics, in terms of moving around in urban environments, particularly in formal settlements or sort of high dense urban environments. The military has very little or minimal training to operate in these environments. So I would argue if anyone's got the training or has the capability to ramp up to that, it very much is still within the police.
Yeah. From a defense point of view, then, where would the police be needing to beef up at this particular point in terms of resources to tackle this crime?
So I think it's twofold. I mean, there's a problem on the end of things where investigations and prosecutions are obviously being held up. Now, we did see the alleged suspects with the shootings in Alex see their day in court yesterday, if I remember correctly. So there is some due process happening on that side, but there's a whole heavy sort of load of things that can be done proactively, both from a policing point of view and from a preparation point of view. I'm talking about sort of just intelligence and that kind of thing that needs to be done and needs to be improved on, that we're simply not seeing. The lack of nighttime surveillance, like I say, the lack of foot patrols at all hours. Why is there not so much proactive policing in these areas that we would like to see? I think any South African in any community would love to see their police patrolling a little bit more often, and I think that needs to be put up to scale. And now, if the excuse, as it were, by the police force, I'm not saying this is the case, but if it were, is that there's not enough manpower, that's something where the military can help, in the sense of, like I said, the military can form up roadblocks. They can take sort of a lot of support positions that then free up those police to then go in and perform these functions that are vital towards providing this safety net that apparently needs to be cast over much of the country every weekend, it seems now.
Yeah. And that kind of demand being placed on the military, would that not extend them also way too much? I mean, we have seen earlier on in the year a report from Minister of Defense saying even their current resources, not wanting, of course, to put the country's security at risk, are not adequate at this particular point in time. They have not received the kinds of budgets. In fact, their budgets have been cut over the years for them to maintain their vehicles and other very important things, and even to beef up their own ammunition and kind of technology that they're using.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole other sort of chapter of miseries that we're not even touching on too much here, is that the military simply doesn't have the money to actually perform these functions. They barely scraped by last year. Like I said, when they deployed all of those soldiers during the unrest, it was pretty much taking out the cooks and the cleaners, putting them back into boots and giving them an assault rifle and sending them out. The military doesn't have that. The military's design is for a force that has a budget roughly equating to 1.5–2% of GDP. We are currently funded, the SNDF rather, is funded at less than 1% and has been for so long now that it's effectively gone beyond the point of no return in terms of its deterioration. So the Defence Force is not really very well suited financially to actually put this forward, and to actually authorize any kind of hypothetical deployment would require emergency funding from somewhere, which goodness knows where that would actually come from now.
John, I appreciate your time and your reflections this evening. That is Africa Defence Review Director John Stupart there, saying it's not what we need right now to deploy the army. In fact, we should be beefing up the capability within the police itself in terms of the softer issues around intelligence, but also the police are much better, more equipped and better positioned to deal with the kind of violence that we have been seeing even in our informal settlements.